As we're asking questions today, I'd ask you to identify your name, and I'll start. Congressman Paul, how long have you and Carol been married?
Oh, let me see now. Trick question, huh? 54 years.
Yeah.
We have 5 children, 18 great-grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. I know all their names, but she knows all their birthdays, so she does.
My question is, why people don't take their fog glasses off and learn more truth about you? Because then you are a second Abraham Lincoln. And you've got so much truth, I think it scares them. And they won't take their fog glasses off. That's my statement.
Okay. I don't know the exact answer in there, but I did write a line that's been repeated at times in one of my books. I said, truth is treason in the empire of lies. So, accused of that, so when I would take a different stand on the foreign policy, you know, like I don't want to go to war. It's not declared. It's not our business. They say, oh, well, that's un-American. That's unpatriotic. You got to keep, you know, doing these things. And yet they've been challenged me on the military. They claim that I'm not supportive of the truth. It turns out that our campaign gets twice as much money as all the candidates put together from the active military people. So I haven't been bothered by that criticism.
If you have a question, please just kind of work your way to the aisle and come down towards David on that side or myself. We'll take a question from this side now.
Hello, Mr. Paul. My name is Zachary. Nice to meet you. It's an honor to speak with you. I'm a 7th generation Iowa farm kid. And we've spoken a lot today about the founders. And I'd like to know your position on something that we've also lost, which is the agrarian republic that Jefferson imagined, of small landholders or farmers who were free to practice their trade without corporatization and so forth. So what would you do to kind of recreate that agrarian notion of the founders?
Well, I would let the nature of the organization and how big a farm should be or how small it should be determined by the people who own the land. The government should neither dictate the size nor prohibit it. But they should never give subsidies to benefit the corporations, and sometimes that is the case. If you take some of those who do receive, sometimes the corporations receive a lot more than the family farmer does. So there are some policies that would do that. But I don't think it would be the role of the government to decide the exact size of a farm. Everybody should be treated equally. Everybody should have as low taxes as possible, less regulations, and no special benefits.
Hi, Mr. Paul. I want to thank you for coming. I heard you say something about lifting regulations. I was wondering, are you concerned about the drinking water of our country? And have you seen the movie that's called Blue Gold? And does lifting regulations on industry, does that have to do with environmental regulations like to protect the public from pollution?
Okay. He's asking about the regulations, and you're saying, isn't there a role for government in protecting us against pollution by the corporations? Is that basically it?
Well, the EPA.
Yes.
Actually, they actually have had problems, but without them, we'll have no protection out here. And I just wonder what your environmental concerns were about our drinking water and environment.
Well, in a private market, free market system, the basic law is you have no right to pollute anybody's land, water, or air, and that's the basic assumption. If they do, if somebody, a corporation or anybody pollutes water, land, or air, they should be stopped rather quickly. Now, what happened in the Industrial Revolution was that they didn't quite understand this. They were much more careless. And big businesses and governments sort of worked together, and they were permitted to pollute. And then after the pollution got out of control, then they thought, well, the answer to it is a bureaucratic approach in Washington, D.C. and create the EPA. But I don't accept that. I think it should be done as locally as possible by land ownership, by promoting the principle that you don't have a right to pollute. Now, local regulations are reasonable. My wife and I were raised in the city of Pittsburgh, and it was a filthy city during World War II in that era because we had steel mills and black soot in the air, and it was a real mess, and the rivers were the sewers. But it was all cleaned up before the EPA, so it isn't, you don't have to have an EPA. But we should not be careless. But one general principle is that when people own land, if you look at it in general, private property land is taken care of much better than government owned. If you look at the commons, which are shared by many, the government owns it, everybody owns it, nobody owns it, those lands are, and even timberlands are treated, are taken care of less well by government than when it's privately owned. So I think that private ownership is a very important principle, but also that you do not have a right to pollute anybody's land or air.
My name is Dave, and I was wondering if you could address the currency manipulation in regards to China and the bill going through this, or going through the Senate bill to address that.
The trade relations with China.
Yeah.
Okay, you ask about addressing the trade relations with China, and I sort of skirted over that in my talk because I said we do better trading with China than we do with fighting them, but there are certainly a lot of qualms right now about the trade policies. But to blame China for everything is not a solution, because our argument in Washington, and it's about to be passed, is that China is unfair because they make their currency weaker than it should be. But that's all we do. That's what the Fed does internally in our country. All they do is make our currency as weak as possible, trying to increase our exports. And this makes the point that if all the currencies were linked to gold, there'd be no competitive devaluations. We wouldn't have this problem. But as long as you have fiat currencies, there's always wanting to get a competitive edge by devaluation. But one thing that I do not like, and it's awful tempting to ask for it, and they say, well, they're selling us too much stuff and we have to quit it. Well, we're not producing and they sell it to us cheap, so what we'll have to do is put tariffs on it. Well, the first thing is putting tariffs on. Let's say you put a 20% tariff on all imports from China. Guess who gets stuck with that? The poor people are trying to survive in this country because they're getting cheap goods. But it won't create any more jobs. What usually happens is you put the tariffs on or devalue, all it does is push your own prices up. So I think what we have to do is fight for a worldwide sound currency, and we have to get our country more competitive, which means that we have to get our taxes down, our regulations down. We can't have artificially high labor rates. Just think in the Midwest, in the Northeast, so many jobs were lost because wages were way above what the market was, and so many of those jobs moved south, where there were right-to-work states, and the businesses continue. Texas, matter of fact, right now, we are picking up some businesses because we're a right-to-work state and no corporate taxes. So, but almost any place in this country, it's hard to compete. And then what happens? The businesses go overseas. So the biggest concern, of course, China, because they are producing so much. But guess what? They're not wasting a lot of money. They're investing in places like Iran and in the Middle East and even in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we're over there just consuming our wealth. I mean, we're over there blowing up bridges, then we're paying to rebuild them. At the same time, our bridges and our infrastructure is going down. So there's a lot we could do to improve our competitiveness. We can't do much to force the Chinese to do anything.
Hello, my name's Lance Davis. I was wondering, if you were able to actually win the presidency, what are the chances of you getting any of this through Congress?
Well, the one thing is, you ask about what are the odds, if I win, how do you get it through Congress? Well, it would be pretty hard to win the presidency without having a change in sentiment by the American people, which means that those in the Congress already, they're very pliable. Sometimes they don't have strong convictions. If they think it's in their best interest to go with more freedom and less government, believe me, they will. But there will also be a lot of new people, too. But it's the sentiment of the people. The type of government we get is a reflection of the people. It isn't that the government gave us this mess. We, the people, have invited it. I mean, for the different special interests, whether it's the corporations or anybody else, they've gone and they've sort of invited all this. So it would not be difficult. You'd have to have coalitions, but when it comes to working with on both sides of the aisle, I think the freedom philosophy is very open. I talked about the drug war and personal liberties. That happens to be something that people that call themselves liberal endorse those views. And also the foreign policy. I work with Republicans and Democrats on trying to change foreign policy. But we get probably more support, maybe 2 times more Democrats than Republicans. So there's no reason why we can't work, with groups like that. But you suggest it could be a problem. There's no doubt it could be, but it won't be quite as big because the sentiment of the whole country would have to change once we win the election.
Yeah.
Time for just one more question. Congressman Paul is going to be in Burlington yet today, and he's going to be at a rally at the University of Iowa tonight at 8 p.m. So if you're in the area and you can make it to Iowa City, please stop by the Memorial Union Main Lounge. 8 p.m. is the time of the rally. It should be a real fun event. And also, if you're interested in becoming a precinct leader, again, talk to the people working the table in the hallway. Also, they're going to be having a meeting for Scott County and some of the neighboring counties right here in the John Deere Auditorium after the event today. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can get Congressman Paul elected to the presidency of the United States, please stick around because this is very important work and we can do it with